He's putting up a good show right to the end.
That's what I get paid for, putting on a show, so.
You're on.
All right. Good evening and welcome to the August 11th meeting of the Stow Board of Selectmen. We'll start out as usual with any public input. Is there any public input on items not on the agenda? And I see Linda waving wildly at me, so Linda.
I am so excited to tell you that we have had 1,962 requests for mail-in ballots as of today. So I'm excited. That is basically a 35% already, 3 weeks from the primary. So I'm excited. The next piece is 356 have been returned, so get those ballots back. Thank you. So we're good.
Do you want to tell anybody what the last day that they can actually request a ballot and?
So to be mailed, the last day is August 26th because we have to allow time for mailing. But early voting will start on August 22nd. We have time from 12 to noon on Saturday and 12 to noon on Sunday. And then 9 to 4 Monday through Friday, the week prior to the election, the 22nd through the 28th. And
Linda,
then we
you
have,
just said,
go
you
ahead.
just said 12 to noon on Saturday.
I did, yeah. Hello, I've been here too long. 12 to 4. 12 to 4, sorry. I was so excited. And then we have in-person voting at the primary, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. So, there you go.
All right.
Voter registration is August 22nd, so if you're not registered or you want to change your party, if you want to go from unenrolled to a party or vice versa, or if you think you want to try a different party, August 22nd.
Thank you, Linda.
Thank you.
I see nobody else waving at me, so I will move on to Chairman's comments. First item is that the Stow Board of Assessors is looking for a member. It's if you're interested in learning about how your property is assessed and things like that, they'd love to hear from you. What you could do is either contact the assessor's office to get more information about it, or you could contact the selectman's office and they'll put you in touch with the right person. The term is to fill an unexpired 3-year term until the next election, and letters of application can be submitted to the selectman's office or the assessor's office. The assessors are a nice group of folks, and I think if you're looking for something different, it may be a nice group to stick your toes in the water in town government.
I'm gonna have to figure it out because it's unacceptable.
The Highway Department has asked me to mention that they're doing a lot of road work around town right now. Their next project's going to be marking throughout the town once they've finished crack sealing. And for construction updates on the Highway Department projects, you can visit the Highway Department website through the town website and look for their construction updates page or construction work updates. Last week I came across something that I thought worth mentioning. The Stow Historical Society sent out a newsletter, one of a series celebrating Stow's women who registered to vote in 1920, so 100 years ago this year. I thought it interesting and asked Marilyn Zavorsky to provide a little more information, which she kindly did. This year, 2020, marks the 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment women's suffrage. Neither Stow's archives nor its written history books contain documentation on the hard-fought struggle. With tenacious determination, the Stow Historical Society began a 9-month journey to learn about Stow's women who registered to vote in 1920. Between August and October 1920, 171 ladies from Stow registered to vote. Numerous town folks contributed photographs and memories of their grandmothers, great-grandmothers, and relations who are now documented as registered to vote. The Stow Historical Society's March 2020 newsletter lays the foundation for a celebration of Stow's women who registered to vote. They'll be publishing Stow's stories and weekly newsletters. They started in July and running through August, and they've been sent out to email to their subscribers and are located on the Stow Historical Society's webpage. I found it fascinating because I recognized a number of women who voted then who I now know their descendants who still live in town. So if you want some interesting reading, check out the Stow Historical Society's website. And now for a little bit of sad news. Last Sunday, Greg Jones, a longtime volunteer in town, passed away. Greg had served for 9 years on the Board of Selectmen from 1995 through 2004 and served on various other committees and boards going back over 20 years, including Capital Planning, Housing Committee, Housing Partnership, Housing Partnership and Housing Task Force, Land Bank Committee, Master Plan Committee, School Committee, or School Building Committee, Stow Housing Authority, and the Villages of Stow Negotiating Commission. He was a strong advocate for affordable housing and also served on the Stow Community Housing Corporation. I worked with Greg on a variety of projects over the years and always found him to be a fair and a voice of reason. We're all going to miss Greg, and his passing is a loss for Stow. Our thoughts and prayers go out to his wife Barbara and his family. If I could ask for a moment of silence, please. And sorry for your loss, Barbara. Greg was a great guy.
He was a very unique character, too.
Yep. Yep.
If you spent time speaking with him, his ideas and his perspectives.
Mm-hmm. Yep. He's one of the first people that I actually got to know when I was on when I was on the Finance Committee, and
he asked me to provide a reference for him when he attempted to go back into the Peace Corps after decades. I mean, he started there in the 60s. That's where I think he and Barbara met, serving in the Peace Corps. And it was an exhaustive process to go through, and at his age, wanting to, true definition of volunteer community service.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And,
Thank you very much.
you're welcome, Barbara. And,
Good. Awesome.
yeah. Well, he meant a lot to an awful lot of people, and he will be missed and he will be remembered.
Thank you.
So, best to your family. Next up is meeting minutes. We have the minutes of July 28th, 2020. Does anybody have any changes?
I have one quick comment. On page 3 at the bottom, where it's talking about, let's see, it's in the town administrator's report, where it says notice of responsibility. I would like to add regarding PFAS at the old fire station.
Yep.
Just to clarify what that notice of responsibility is.
I agree. Tim?
I have nothing.
Ellen, Mike, Megan, nothing. The only other thing that I had found was under the 8 Can't Wait campaign, where it said the board voted unanimously to reform. I think it was change or update. We weren't actually reforming the policies, we were changing them. And it was department's use of force policy relating to the duty to intervene.
Yep, I agree.
And That was the only thing that I had. Megan, Ellen, anything on that? Did you get that?
Thank you.
I heard you, I can't hear Ellen.
They
just
they
said
were
thank you.
okay.
Okay.
I move we accept the minutes of July 28th as amended.
I'll second.
All right, Megan?
Aye.
Aye. Ellen? Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All right, unanimous. And next up is correspondence. And Megan?
Hi. So I was planning on bringing this up probably in the next month or so, but I was thrilled to see this letter from Catherine West talking about possibly changing the name of the board from the Board of Selectmen to the Select Board. It's really important to me to feel included, and especially because we have 3 women on this board right now. To use gendered language still doesn't make sense to me. I do understand that there possibly could be some legal issues with that, and so I talked to you, Tom, about this, maybe putting this on a future agenda for discussion for the entire board.
And we can do that.
Awesome.
I'm not sure exactly when, but I'll get it on as soon as possible, probably within the next couple meetings, if that works for you.
No works for me.
Anything else relating to correspondence?
I wanted to just make a quick mention. There is a letter from an individual a handwritten letter, about an issue over on White Pond and Town Forest. And that is a Conservation Commission issue, and it's being dealt with through that, so. It's all good.
All right.
Courtney, isn't that, we got a notice somewhere that they're actually fixing that part of White Pond Road this week, or it was closed, is what I saw a notice about. Is that right?
I think so. I'm trying to remember what I read.
Actually, is the superintendent on the call? Maybe he can answer. I don't know who's doing the work. I don't know if that was them or
That might be
Armor, but.
something else.
Yeah, I think, Ellen, that this is actually, it's a place where it becomes access to town forest, so I don't think it's on the street itself.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So basically, it's a wetland issue, it's a stream crossing, and it will probably be gated so that it doesn't get out of hand. And the Conservation Commission's handling the wetland issues, working with the individual who is responsible for what's going on there.
I think you're still muted, Ellen.
I'm just nodding.
You're nodding, okay.
Thank you for the clarification. Appreciate it.
All right. Next. Discussion, vote authorizing the chair to sign a right of entry. Is Jesse on by any chance?
They have a planning board meeting going on right now.
Okay.
I just texted him a few moments ago, so he knows we're just about there.
All right. Maureen just texted him. I don't want to really get into the counted, or the, get into it with the moderator until we've taken care of this.
Could I
If,
just make a comment, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
My reading of this is that it's very similar to other rights of entry that we have approved in the past. It looks like it's a matter of access to the road margin in order to deal with some drainage, and so it's kind of just a temporary access to the property, and it looked in order to me.
I was thinking the same thing. Looks like it's with the landowner's consent.
Mm-hmm.
They're looking for our consent. I would prefer to hear a little bit of something from Mr. Steadman, but if that doesn't happen, I would be happy to revisit it at the end and just enter into it based on what we know.
Right.
I mean, that's just me, and I guess Courtney.
I'd be willing to make a motion, so
Okay.
happy to wait. Can we table this item and,
Yeah.
or,
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll table this item, and it probably will be fairly quick
Yeah.
once Jesse.
Jesse just said he can't leave, he'd have to talk about it a little later.
All right, so, all right, let's then move on to a bit of a town meeting debrief, and then we can talk a little bit about any plans that we might have for a future town meeting. Mr. Walrath, how are you this evening?
I am fine. How are you?
Glad to see you.
Good to see you.
So, I don't know, this started out as your idea, so I'll let you start out, Dave.
Well, it started with, I jumped on it early because I knew the selectmen were considering a Chapter 61 land, which I assume I believe you've decided not to move on. But whatever, if you are planning a fall town meeting, my thought is the earlier you can start planning, the better. We had to delay the annual town meeting because we were not up enough on getting things planned.
Yeah.
And
If it's okay with you, Dave, one of the things I was thinking of trying to do with this is maybe talk about how everybody felt town meeting went to begin with.
that's something I'll let you lead. I thought it went pretty well, all things considered.
All right. Well, in that case, I'll take the lead on that. I think things, given the circumstances, things went pretty well. One of the things that I had a little problem with up on the stage was some of the sound, but I think that can, it's something that can be fixed. And, that, other than that, and the amount of, the vast amount of work that ended up going into it, I think it went pretty well, and we were very lucky with the weather. But a lot of people put a lot of time into it, and other than that, I think I'm pretty happy with the way things went. Ellen?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say it went okay. I mean, I think there was, I was hugely disappointed in the turnout, and I think that was a result of being in July. Probably hard to know. And Linda and I had talked about whether we should send a survey out to try to get a sense of why people didn't come, as well as those who did come. But I think the sound issue was a huge problem, and from reading Jonathan's notes in the court or somewhere in the packet, clearly that was a real challenge for him and his team. And I don't know quite how to fix that. But I guess I just have to say, about 600 times that the work that Linda and Deb did was like above and beyond anything that we should have expected of them. I mean, they should have had more help. The amount of work they had to put in, not knowing how many people were going to show up, and all these packets that were perfectly done in terms of everything was right there. There was copies of everything. There was no, except for Finance Committee, everybody got their stuff in, and it was really, it was just really impressive that once you arrived, it was very smooth from the participant side. So I think even, having to work around not having the live presentations actually worked pretty well. I mean, I think some people did better with that than others in terms of how to present when you don't have a screen behind you. But, so and then my other thoughts are just about going forward and with some of the comments from in the packet about indoor, outdoor cars, that sort of thing. But, so I just think, I mean, clearly it could be as much work as it was this summer, And I hope we don't do it anywhere near the elections, because that's just, unless we're gonna hire 3 or 4 people to do it, because there's no way that we should expect the town clerk to pull off a town meeting in the middle of 2 fall elections. So, that's all.
Megan, any comments?
So I think it went really well. I second the comment about the sound. I think I'm going to echo Ellen's comments about the incredible amount of work that that everyone put into it. Especially, I know Deb and Linda put in so much work. And I hope that we can debrief this and really come up with some good action items moving forward, to make sure that, you know, there's not a lot of scrambling at the end. There are certain things that we can foresee coming down the pike at this point, things that were problems. So yeah, so that's about all I have right now.
Courtney?
I guess I'll echo agreement with a lot of what's been said and add that I think it would be very useful to recruit extra volunteers on the sound preparation front, on the, you know, to aid the clerks, and if not volunteers, possibly depending on if we think this is appropriate, you know, hiring people for help with the various things that need to be set up. And I kind of agree that it might be a little crazy to try and do this while we've got a presidential election going on, for instance. So it might be worth waiting until after that in November, even though it'll get cooler. I'm imagining that it might be possible that folks that want to be outdoors in order not to be enclosed in a space would be okay with, you know, taking what they get. They get to dress up, put, you know, warm clothes or the, you know, whatever it is. So.
Tim?
Not much to be added other than I think the clickers are here to stay, at least based on the comments I heard. I thought the town meeting went better than any of us had a right to expect. I think a lot of people deserve a lot of credit for that, but in particular, the clerk's office and those packets that got put together turned out to be a very good, although very time-consuming and work-intensive substitute for the presentations. My subjective sense, and this bears on the next conversation, is that there were enough people uncomfortable with a purely indoor town meeting that unless things change radically, I think we have to plan on an outdoor option. I guess that's about it.
And I don't think there's anything else for me to say other than I know the amount of work that Deb and Linda put in too. So, all right.
Can I say one thing?
Ellen? I'm sorry. You're muted, Ellen.
It's Deb.
Oh, Ellen was away.
One thing before Deb jumps in, with one thing that wasn't worked out perfectly was the outdoor area in terms of, you know, the inside seemed to be really well figured out and laid out so that there was clear space. As it turned out, not that many people, but outside, it wasn't done that way, and it really made it very inefficient. A lot of people talked to me and said they ended up sitting out in the sun because the spacing was so erratic that there was no sort of safe way to be 6 or 8 feet apart. And I think not setting up chairs out there, you know, I think if we did a tent again, we should spend the time to figure out how to set up the chairs. That was just my last thought.
Deb?
The only thing I'd say is I checked in with the clicker guys, who, if we were going to do a drive-in or another indoor-outdoor, we would need them. And they book up quickly for October and November because of other business commitments. So we would want to book them sooner rather than later if we need to.
Okay.
I have a follow-up on that. Do I recollect that we could book them and then cancel pretty close to when they're actually going to come and do the work and not get...
Well, that seems when they've already told us that they would be losing business.
Yeah, that's unkind.
Yeah, it seems, yeah. I would want to know that we were going to move forward in good faith with the town meeting if we were booking them.
Of course.
Yeah.
Okay. Good to know. Stow TV clapping, or
I'm raising my hand.
you're raising your hand?
I know about some of the sound issues that I know of are the fact that Center School, the speakers over the gym area apparently do not work. And I had one of the people over there trying to fix it, and apparently he said it's never been used and it's never worked. The other issue is that where Dave and Tom were, there isn't a monitor speaker. There's usually a speaker up on the ceiling facing you guys. And I didn't realize until you mentioned it, Dave, about 2 hours into the meeting, that you weren't hearing things. Like you figured out that when you went around front, you could hear stuff. So I'm wondering, that's what I know of. Ellen and Megan had mentioned sound being a big issue. I didn't hear of anything else. As far as I know, the people outside heard, the people in the audience inside heard. If there was anything else, I'd like to hear about that, because that would definitely need to be addressed.
Linda?
Yeah, so I two things. I want to talk about the packets just for a minute. Thank you for Maureen and your staff for getting the packets with David together, getting them to the printer, and then we had volunteers and helpers putting us all together. So it does take a whole huge team. The sound thing, I found that the assisted listening devices, I actually used it for the last few articles, and there are 48 assisted listening devices at Center School that I don't think have been used much at all, but they work great. I might use those too next time around. But one of the things I was going to say is, depending on where we're going to hold it, and if you're thinking about a drive-in and having it someplace, we need to figure out quite quickly whether those drive-in places are available. And and part of that is, will those Evo clickers work in those locations? And I'm going to tell you that Debbie and I are coming up for air on November 15th. Because the final report is due to the Secretary's office on the 15th, and so the 3rd is critical. So we're not going to be able to kind of do some of those things, and setting up the Evo clickers really has to have somebody else coordinate that. It cannot be us. We are stretched to the limit. So that's my comments. But I thought everybody did a great job, and we did a really a fabulous thing on short notice time frame. So thank you, everybody, who helped.
All right, I guess now we can move on to a little bit of a discussion on going forward. And I'll let you go back to that, Dave.
So the selectmen need to make a decision, again, sooner rather than later. Do we want to have a fall town meeting at Center School, at Neshoba, and or a drive-in, to do a drive-in town meeting? All of the options have problems, and the final decision is probably much like we ended up with the annual town meeting, picking what we think is the least bad of a bunch of core options. And before you discuss that, I will throw in, I didn't mention the sound thing. I assume since Stow TV was on, that would be brought up. The indoor sound problem, I think just some speakers of some regular speakers brought in would fix that. But so if you did pick Center School, I think the problems could be fixed. I think if Maureen put together a nice little packet of returns from department heads, the problem is going to be the weather, and I'm not so much worried about cold or hot. Bugs won't be a problem. I'm worried about things like hurricanes, which we have had. In fact, was just 3 or 4 years ago we had a town meeting that we had to postpone. So, anyways, I'll let Tom go around now. We have others that wish to talk.
Ellen? You're muted. You're muted, Ellen.
I'm sorry, just having to find my, I guess, oh shoot, now I've lost my train of thought. Oh, I guess the first question is the only reason we'd be having a special town meeting is if we go forward with 61, with the chapter 61 land? Are there other things that are pressing that would have to be addressed? I mean, I know there's this whole issue of the state budget and whether we get cut on local aid, which would change a budget issue, which clearly that would require a new town meeting, but is 61 the only other sort of pressing item that would cause us to have a fall town meeting?
I think, at least from my standpoint, and correct me if I'm wrong, the main reason we would have a fall town meeting would be for budget issues. If we're ready with the Chapter 61, fine, but I would probably personally not advocate for a town meeting just for Chapter 61.
Well, but there's time limits on, if we want to move forward with 61, we're going to have a town meeting,
Well,
right? We cannot think about having 2 town meetings, right? I mean, and so I guess maybe I'd like to hear from Bill what his current word is from the legislature about state aid and whether we think there's going to be a need to have a second vote on budget things.
There's no formal position being taken by either of the houses of the general court or the governor's office. What has occurred is they've extended their 1/12 budget for 2 more months, 3 until the end of October. So the state has funded its obligations through the end of October, which then brings us into a particularly tight schedule with respect to setting tax rates and other things, not knowing at this point what the local aid will be. Particularly the school local aid. The non-school local aid as a revenue source is so small that the budget as it's presented, I can't imagine I could make work without a town meeting. But most states are waiting to hear what Congress is going to do, and the President, Senate and Congress. The additional federal aid that's being, until the last few days, negotiated by the House and the Senate, and they've stopped negotiating for the moment, and there's been executive orders put into place, though they'll be challenged in court by Trump, to extend unemployment benefits, because there have been, for the last few days, no serious negotiations, and they're probably $2 trillion apart between where the House and the Senate are. And one of the big ticket items in there is whether to provide monies to each state, to provide to the state and local governments revenues that they need because of the revenue shortcomings because of COVID. I believe the House has stated here in Massachusetts that they would commit to level funding local aid in 2021. Now, that's their commitment. All they can do is, they're 1/3 of, and I think though, it hasn't been stated expressly that the governor and the Senate might be leaning the same way, but of course, saying it and finding the money for it are 2 different things.
Yeah.
Can I add something, Tom?
Yeah.
It's a good question. So, like Bill said, the MMA just reported that the House, I thought it was the House and Senate, committed to local aid and school aid at least fiscal 20 levels, which I would think would still be an issue for Neshoba. Any department that is largely collectively bargained is going to have raises built in, and that would still be an issue. But don't forget, the usual deadlines for the Chapter 61 land have been extended indefinitely. The usual 120 days doesn't even start to run until 90 days after the end of the state of emergency. And I know that the people who are interested in purchasing Halleck's Point have said they'll be ready for our town meeting no matter when we schedule it.
And so really, at least my first thought on it would be, is what we would do is we would fit Halleck's Point in to the, a fall town meeting, but we probably wouldn't call a fall town meeting. We would, I'll say, avail ourselves of the legislation that's in place, and wait till the state of emergency is over, or the next regularly scheduled town meeting.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
Hey, Linda, are you still there? I can't see.
She's in there.
Yes, I'm here.
Linda, you said that your office comes up for air as of November 15th.
Yeah.
Is there, let's talk about before the general election. Are you saying that as far as you're concerned, a town meeting any time between the primary and the general is a no-go?
Yes, especially since I'm expecting a 90% turnout for the November election, and of that, probably 80% will be mail-in ballots.
I mean, may I assume if we had some miracle and scheduled it for late September, early October, you could make that happen, or no?
Not now. But you know what? You guys, I'll just call on everybody else to pitch in and doing all the stuff.
No, Linda, it's a question. That's all it is.
We will do, certain things have to be done by us. But, we'll just have to have more people helping us. That's all.
I'm trying to identify the window of opportunity. So is...
November 7th and 14th even though I said I'd come up for air on the 15th, that would be a workable solution. I don't want to go further into December or January because then we're dealing with storms and other things that are issues. If you were to do something the very end, less than a month away, 6 weeks away, it's going to be chaotic.
And say again what you just said about late November?
Yeah, you could, the latest in November you could go is probably the 21st.
And why
A
is...
week before Thanksgiving.
And why is December 5th ATM not viable?
I'm just thinking, well, you take a chance of storms, but if you, I don't like going past November, but we've had storms, but if you want to, December would, we'll make it work.
Yeah.
I'm concerned, we've had storms in December. There was the community park, we had blizzard.
Yes, but we also had an October hurricane. That's always and there'll have to be a rain date. So I'm taking from this a window of opportunity, either a miracle ATM 5 or 6 weeks from now, which would be extremely difficult to pull off for a lot of people, or practically speaking, Thanksgiving or shortly thereafter. Is that fair?
Well, I think she had also said that potentially the 11th or 14th,
Oh,
7th.
7th or 14th of November.
It'll still be crazy, but
okay.
But
One thing too, Tom, if we can just add, for the assessor has to file certain things by the end of the year. They're working with a new system, so she's a little nervous about having it really close to December and having to get all of her filing done for the state.
Could I comment on
Set the
that?
taxes.
I would anticipate that the state DOR, like every other state source, it is true that typically you try to get your tax rate set per a schedule of mid to late November. So they come in, they get you to certify and vote to support a single tax rate. They take that, put that into the tax recap, it goes to DOR, and within a few days you've got your tax rate. Having said that, statutorily, you can literally go to almost the end of December. Some of the more economically and fiscally challenged communities in my part of the state have gone without set tax rate because they couldn't get a budget until late fall. So I think what will happen here is if the state is unable to vote a budget, say by the end of October, there's no one's going to be held to any deliverables, I would imagine. I'm not the governor here, but in fairness, I don't know how they could wait that long, knowing that every municipality, to some degree, and it's only a variance of degree and not kind, needs to know what the state aid is going to be as a revenue source for them. Some communities, again, in my neck of the woods, don't have a budget until they've got state aid, both the school and the municipal. So that's going to be the driver, from my perspective, when it comes to anything related to the 21 budget, setting the tax rate, going back to town meeting or not. And so I would say this to you. I would wait until such time as we get some indication of when the state expects to produce a budget before speculating on setting dates related to that or setting the tax rate. And then I would drive the 61 process after you've got a safe date. And if it means it's in the winter, I guess I'd say it's in the winter. This is a special town meeting, not an annual. I think there'll be maybe 2 items on it, okay? Maybe 1, because depending on what the state does, we might have a budget, we might not. But it will be the schools coming back and reducing their budget. So again, it's not, so I think you'd want to order the decision-making based on those speculative ideas that we don't have an answer to yet, and what you're trying to do, I think, is difficult to do. But I'd go later in the year. Then you don't have to worry about Linda, you don't have to worry about these other things. Okay, it's December. Now, that probably shoots down an outside-inside, but I'm wondering, if you took Hale School with the auditorium, the cafeteria, and the gym, and I'm just looking at the numbers we had back here at our annual town meeting, you'll have less than that. I'd be shocked if you couldn't make it all indoor.
That's a good point. Well,
And then it doesn't matter. You go when you have to.
Jim?
I mean, sort of building on that, there's a few decisions we need to make sooner rather than later. Deb makes a good point about the clickers. And if we're going to have an outdoor thing, we need to reserve it. Although, frankly, you just made a very good point. With a special with 2 articles on it, maybe we can get away with multiple indoor settings. I do think, though, that as a practical matter, it sounds to me, trying to respect Linda's schedule, which I do think is a priority here, given what they have to do this year. I do think as a practical matter, we're looking at Saturday, November 21st, the Saturday before Thanksgiving, or Saturday, December 5th, which is before you really start getting into the holiday season. You don't want to do the 28th, that's the Saturday after Thanksgiving, nobody will be around. Anything earlier screws up Linda unreasonably. Anything later in calendar 2020 is to be avoided because of the holiday season, I think. So we could start making some decisions based on that.
Yeah, I think the further you push out your front end number, I think it tends to reduce some of the risks that you're dealing by going earlier. And some of the more, you're just adding complications that I don't think are necessary, and concede the point that you're gonna go later November or so.
Yeah.
Can I say one thing? Sorry.
Yes, Megan.
So my only concern with moving it later, I am 100% understanding of their schedules. The thing that concerns me is having a meeting that is all indoors in late November, December, which is cold and flu season in the middle of a pandemic. I worry that people just won't come. And I understand that you're saying that, we haven't had people show up before, and so maybe we probably won't get those numbers, but I don't really know that that's a fair, I understand why you're saying it, but I also feel like that shouldn't be our end game. We should try and get people to go to town meeting. That should be something that's happening. So, so yes, that's just my concerns about having an all indoor one.
Yeah, Jim?
But practically speaking, Megan, then when does that mean? When are you suggesting we have it?
I'm not sure. I felt like I needed to bring that forward because it is, we're in a weird position. I guess I'm also unclear. It sounds like if the Chapter 61 doesn't need to be dealt with possibly until 2021, that we could have a special town meeting or just add it to the annual town meeting in the spring. I don't know. I guess I'm not clear on what action items absolutely need to happen.
I think it's the 21 budget.
Yeah.
You know, and we're not gonna know, in my opinion, based on, and again, this is speculation, it's educated speculation. It's like me thinking we'll have room at this Hale School if we use all three venues at probably one, we could force a one article special town meeting, or we don't need any, but October 31st is all that the state has done to this point on their own budget. I don't control when the state will make their decisions, nor do any of us in this audience. That's going to be the driver. When they finally give the schools and the communities a commitment, all three, the Senate, the House, and the governor, on what state aid is going to be. I mean, those aren't controllable for us.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I don't think having an earlier town meeting before the state has told us what we've got for sure, or more importantly, both schools,
Yeah.
I don't know how to define that, but it's not logical.
Again, it makes perfect sense. I'm just saying that I also feel like if we have to be in a situation where it's all indoors, in cold and flu season in a pandemic, that I feel like we just won't get the turnaround. So.
Well, I gotta say, I'm not eliminating the idea of the drive-in. I did see the public safety chiefs recommending against it because of the possibility of CO2 leaking into cars, but I don't know. We may have to just deal with that.
Sorry, one more thing. We also can tell people not to run their cars while they're parked. If it's really going to be that short of time, wear a jacket and sit in your car. There's signs in front of Center School that say no idling. Like you're not supposed to have your car running in a parking lot, really. So I would. Or
run it for 5 minutes or less if you have to run it to get a little bit of heat. Right.
I do think we could get around that for sure.
Yeah.
Courtney?
I have perhaps a really naive question. What does it take to set up to have people vote by mail for something? Is there any way that we can add a vote by mail option for our special town meeting ballot questions?
I think Linda is saying no,
Having-
please no.
No, please, no more.
Yeah, no, I guess, well, David probably should really explain this better than I, but because we make amendments on the floor, you
Right.
can't have a ballot vote, because that article could be totally
Yeah, I don't
different
think
than
we
what
can do
we
that.
would have in the warrant. And we don't know our funding, if there's something to be funded or where it goes, but, it's the whole thing about being able to make a motion and, changing that article. And
Okay.
so, that's, yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Linda, one question, might have some bearing on this, is for the last number of special town meetings, how many people have attended?
Probably less than 300. I'd have to give you the history. I think it hasn't been very big. And
I remember less than
and I'll look up
200
the
at the
history.
last.
I'll get off the camera and I'll go look up the history and I'll tell you.
Yeah,
again.
no, because I was thinking, given that our annual town meeting was fairly sparsely attended, what kind of turnout could we expect for a special one item that really just deals, I'll say, with the budget and possibly,
So the Dawes property in 2000, just a week after I became clerk, had one of the highest turnouts to purchase the Dawes property.
mhm.
And it lasted as one of the highest turnouts for a long time until we discussed doing Minuteman. So if it's a purchase of the property, it's a little smaller number, it's a little smaller acreage, you know, it's different, but it's in the same area.
At-
So
at
I
some-
don't know what you're gonna be able to do to turn out. So, and in a pandemic, my calculations and predictions are way off.
If you want to increase the probability of minimizing the risk here, because there's no perfect solution. No matter what you choose,
There isn't.
there's going to be some risk, somebody discomforted, someone discouraged from going. I'm not prophetic, but I look back real well. Most of our special town meetings, and in this case, if we could do one of two things on the chapter property, just concede the point that we're going to delay it, maybe till the next annual town meeting, okay? That then reduces it to either no special need for special town meeting at all, or one article, which is the budget. So that right off the bat's going to reduce, by definition, the attendance. We can get a seat count for the cafeteria, the auditorium, and the gymnasium at Center School for a one-question special town meeting. And if that's count, and I'm guessing it's over 200, maybe it's close to 3, with the bleachers out, then you can, we had, with bleachers alone and without using the seats on the court, I remember a number of years ago, you may just decide that you'll do the best you can, waiting as long as you can. That we don't control because the state's going to control it. Then you limit what might be the risk of discouraging people from going by taking the Chapter 61 out, if it's true that there's time. And we'll determine that at some point. Now it's that, you're down to that one issue, the budget. And let's say, for example, that level funded at 2020, Chapter 70, which is going to be the big number for the schools. Like I said, for me, on the town side, we're good. If it's level funded, that gap probably is going to be narrow, and it's going to be a need for either increasing our budget some because the schools can't decrease theirs any further, or they come back and say we can meet that small gap, or it's a combination of the two. That's going to be the only question there. And as a practical matter, if you're going to take risk on speculation, that's the direction I would go.
Tom, one other thing, don't forget,
Over it in.
Hold on.
with a special, so even if we're at December 5th, for example, the warrant has to get to people 2 weeks ahead, so you're backing out like mid-November already, or end of November. So if we were thinking of November 7th, that probably wouldn't give enough time with the budget, the state not responding till end of October.
Well, I know, and it'll drive Linda insane, and I think justifiably. November 7th. I think somebody else wanted,
Yeah, a couple things. One is, I think clearly we have to wait as long as possible. I would agree with Bill on that we can't do it until after we know what the state budget issues are. I would not, though, do a single issue town meeting. If we're going to have a meeting on the budget, we should add it. If we move forward on the Chapter 61 line, we should combine them because then we're just letting that hang, and who knows when suddenly we'd have to have another town meeting to deal with it if they pull the state of emergency. So, but I was in favor before of an outdoor, the cars town meeting because several towns did it and said it worked very well. I think it really was sort of silly to say that cars are going to be running for 2 hours. Of course they're not going to be running, and you can go around telling people turn off your cars. Same way we should be walking around town buildings saying put on your mask, right? So I think that's I still think that might be the solution, especially in a different kind of temperature thing. But I also feel like if we're going to I think we can spread around, not at Center because we've learned that the sound is not great, but at Hale, where we've had lots of experience in using the cafeteria, the gymnasium, and the auditorium. And if we really spread people out, you can fit a lot of people in. Now, Megan's right. There's still going to be people who are going to be very uncomfortable, and I don't know that we can. We can spread out to lots of different rooms at Hale on a Saturday if we had to. But I think, given if we're talking, late November or later, planning for an outdoor tent is not going to be, I think it's not a very responsible or practical plan at this point. So, but it does sound to me like there's a really good chance we might not have to have a town meeting depending on what happens with the budget, and nobody knows. I mean, Bill won't be here, we don't know what the legislature's gonna decide to do, like, I don't think we can lock in the e-voting people, because we really don't know if we're gonna have a town meeting or not.
Megan?
One more thing, I just wanted to throw out there, that the high school has decided to go fully remote at least this term for right now. So that also is another option, maybe for town meeting, which I would assume is bigger, and we'd be able to spread out more, there as well, if hail was not an option, so.
I don't think we can.
We can go the next town over, I believe.
Oh, yeah, physically go. I thought you meant a virtual town meeting.
No.
Can I?
No, I meant like physically we would hold it at Neshoba.
I get it now.
Kathy, it looked like you were...
Yeah, just for the couple of comments about holding Halleck's Point until annual town meeting in May. We don't know right now that that's an option. I mean, based on everything we know right now, we have until about the end of March. We don't know that we have into May. So obviously it depends what happens with the state of emergency, but all things being equal, I think we'd rather go sooner rather than later. Sooner meaning when you do the budget this year.
Assuming we have to.
Exactly.
Tim?
Can I make one point and then a suggestion geared toward pulling this to an end?
Mm-hmm.
The point is, I agree with Ellen that if we're going to have a town meeting, let's do both issues. I feel like there's a willing buyer and a willing seller out there on Halleck's Point, and Chapter 61 gives us the right to interfere with their transaction, but it's distasteful to hold a town meeting at which we could have considered it and not. My suggestion is to delegate this to the town administrator, who can then talk to whoever he, as soon as she wants to talk to, within a certain parameters. Come back to us with a recommendation for a late November, early December town meeting. Give us options inside and outside. Outside including the drive-in option. And make a decision on, and make a recommendation on the clickers. And come back to us, I hate to say it, poor Denise, but first meeting in September on this.
I'll give her something fun to do.
Yeah, give her something to do with her first few days.
I think the simplest and straightforward thing to do is take the group that basically I organized for the annual town meeting and have that group now take on the challenge of repeating that exercise, but for a special town meeting instead of trying to start something all over again from scratch.
Yep.
I mean, I had the moderator, the town clerk, the assistant town clerk, the public safety folks, that Stow TV, I mean, everybody that would be engaged in this next effort or would want to be engaged. Now, we could add to that if there are other sources, people, Board of Selectmen want that could get involved, but this is an exercise they've just gone through, and I think to increase the chances of not repeating mistakes or taking on new ones, that group just continue on.
So it's much cleaner for us from the open meeting law perspective to just delegate it to an individual who can then talk to whoever they want to talk to. So I understand what you're saying.
So that's what I would do unless there was a better idea. And then within a couple of weeks, and I'll be speaking with Denise on some ongoing matters that she can expect to become engaged in as soon as she comes in the door and sits in the seat. And I'll be there obviously part-time to help. But that would then become a group that she organizes and oversees, and then they can come to the board and give you updates and recommendations.
And options, and we're going to be that much closer to finding out what might come out of the state.
Yeah, because clearly the state has to understand the difficulty that this uncertainty and the pressures it's putting on every community in the state and their own state agencies as well as other services and budget items that they have. And so they're working desperately, but of course, you would want to wait to see whether the federal government's going to step in and provide you with a sum of money. I think what may happen is a compromise between the federal Senate, House of Representatives, and the President, or the administration, is that the CARES Act, for example, they assigned us 600 and something thousand. We'll be lucky to spend 50. So I think part of the argument by some is that a lot of the money that we've put out there hasn't been spent, and as a practical matter won't be spent. And so how about taking that unexpended money already appropriated, though for a different purpose, and all I have to do is pencil whip something that says now it can be used for lost revenues, which is something it can't currently be used for. It'd be that simple and straightforward, which means the government will never do it. But the money is there for most of we've spent very little statewide across the communities and all the money that's been given under the CARES Act. And if you add what we might have to spend for a special town meeting for some of the same things, like I said, we're pegged for 600 and something thousand. And so I'm hopeful that the state's and many states are talking with the feds about that kind of thing, taking the existing money unexpended for different purposes and just repurpose it.
Yeah.
And then it takes all the politics out of adding more trillions to it and how much, for what purpose, and I think that's being discussed, and if not, the state is clearly discussing they need to give some direction to the community sooner rather than later if anybody's going to get an approved budget and get a tax rate set.
Courtney, did you have something?
I think it's a great idea to delegate this to the town administrator.
No,
And
I'm strongly opposed to that. I mean, is that the priority we want her to first work on in her first week? This is the selectmen and the town moderator to discuss and decide it. It seemed pretty clear we don't have the information now we're gonna need. Right.
But that's all the more reason,
In early September.
but that's all the more reason to delegate it to staff. That's what we have staff for.
And the thing is, they're not making the decision. What they're doing is they'd be giving us options.
Right. We would have more information and more options than we have tonight.
I don't know of who exists out there that's going to be able to.
What information do we need? We've heard about the budget. We've heard from the town clerk.
Well, presumably
We
somebody,
haven't heard as much from David. I think he's been trying to say something and he hasn't had a chance. But I don't know. I don't know that I mean.
Who's going to work all this out then?
yeah, and somebody could reach out to
Mill
Millen, somebody could reach out to Millen, Maine, and see if it's available, reach out to Bose, see if it's available.
Ellen,
don't-
can you
and-
elaborate a little bit on why you would prefer not to have staff do this?
I'm not saying that staff, we've just heard a lot from staff. We have a lot of information right now. We're afraid to make a decision, but we can't make a decision because we don't know what the budget schedule is. We're not gonna know that on September 5th or 8th or 12th. I mean, that's gonna be going forward. So obviously we've heard from staff is what I said. I didn't say we shouldn't delegate it to them. And I just don't think it's the right thing to send first thing to the to our brand new town administrator, to ask her to start worrying about this stuff when we just got a whole lot of information. And really all we need to agree on is that when are we gonna have enough information to decide if we have to have a fall town meeting? That to me that's what we should be discussing.
but we
Really,
haven't,
I mean, there's lots of stuff we could talk about with COVID and finances and CARES Act, but that's really, right now, all we have control over is at what point do we have to make a decision on having a fall town meeting?
I think the manner and means by which the meeting is held is
Until
what
we
we're
hear
talking
the budget,
about,
we won't
not
know.
whether and when.
yeah, we don't know whether it's gonna be indoor, outdoor, where.
Right, because we don't even know if we need to have one. I'm
Who-
just saying, I feel like
So,
we had a discussion about worked and didn't work, and we know that we can't do it sooner than November.
well, I hear what you're saying. I'm ready to make a motion. I hear what you're saying about not saddling the new town administrator with this first thing. So I'm gonna change it to the second meeting in September. We may have more information then, but I'm gonna make a motion to table this matter right now, delegate it to the town administrator who may be a different town administrator at the time, to come back with recommendations for a fall town meeting in late November, early December, with indoor and outdoor options, and a decision on clickers or no clickers.
I'll second the motion.
Can we see if David has anything to say before we?
I was going to
vote?
say, Dave, do you have anything?
No, I think that's very useful. My big question was less the date and more the venue, and knowing what I think more than the simple things, knowing what the different venues would need and what the cost would be is something that the selectmen are probably going to be very interested in before you make a decision on.
I think I forgot from my motion, she should come back at the second meeting in September.
But sorry.
Megan?
I thought I thought that the role of the selectmen in town meeting, and stop me if I'm wrong, but I thought the role of the selectmen in town meeting was deciding the venue. And so we're only just gonna vote up, I'm just confused
Well,
as to what our role is.
we're trying to find out what the options are for the venue. I think we've made progress by knowing we're probably not doing something the end of October. And this is the same discussion we'd be having, except we'd be talking about having maybe something in October, but we've decided to put it off to late November, early December, and that's going to also narrow some of the venue options.
And by doing this, we're acting like any chief executive officer would by getting recommendations from our staff that we can accept, reject, or modify. The decision still remains with us. I hope that was clear.
Mhm.
Okay.
Somebody has to gather information, somebody has to call vendors, somebody has to,
Well, hold on. I did meeting planning for my job before this, so I'm well aware of all the stuff that goes into it. I just now I understand a little bit more what our purview is as selectmen.
Okay.
Right. So, any more discussion on that? All right. All in favor, I'll do a roll call. Courtney?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
Megan? You're muted.
Aye.
Aye. Ellen?
Aye.
And I'll vote aye, so unanimous. All right. So it looks like we're looking at late December, or late November, early December, or not at all, and we'll get some updates, second meeting in September.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Dave. Thanks, Linda.
Thank you. Anybody else that chimed in and waited
Thank you.
in case we needed your advice?
Let's see.
Jesse?
It's just,
No. But it might need to be another night.
Why don't we just, do you want to make a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that motion.
well,
When you're ready, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
all right. You want to discuss then the sign of the right of entry agreement? I think as Jim said before, it's pretty much a boilerplate. They've allowed, the owner has agreed to allow the town right of entry, and we just have to sign off on it, correct?
I think so. I'm not,
You seem to,
It looked that way to me.
Yep.
Does the town administrator have any further comment?
no, I think it's straightforward.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to authorize the chair to sign the right of entry agreement for 92 Great Road as presented by the planning department in our packet.
second.
any discussion? Megan? Ellen? All right, roll call. Megan?
Aye.
Ellen? Oh, You gotta unmute.
Okay, aye.
Aye,
Sorry.
all right. Courtney?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
I'll vote aye. So that's unanimous. Now, this looks like the original. Maureen, do I just need to sign this one?
You know, I need to get Linda to notarize it, but you can sign it. There she is. Yeah. Notary.
Johnny on the spot.
Johnny on the spot?
All right, is this,
Okay,
oh,
okay.
is it the one in here? No, this is more DCHD, right? So is it just this one that, grantee? So, grantee, Town of Stow, by and through its Board of Selectmen, and then sign? Is that what I need to do on this? Does anybody?
Yeah, I think that's it. It's just a, yeah.
Yeah.
Just acknowledge that you did it. I looked up the numbers that Craig gave us to use Hale with the COVID spread. They're figuring in cafeteria, gym, and auditorium, 297.
Sounds pretty good.
So
We
Maureen,
won't exceed that.
so Maureen, that should be all set then.
Yep. It's just Tom, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
All right.
Copy that one.
Yeah, I'll just go in.
On to Police Chief Search Subcommittee and/or other options. One of the things that we ended up discussing back in May was forming a committee. The actual options that we have is we can form a committee to do a search for internal and external candidates, which we've done before, the last time probably about 20 years ago. The second option would be to post and request internal candidates only, which we have done probably about 10 years ago. And the third option would be simply appoint, acting Chief Solis. But, so those really are our three options. But what we did is back in May, we talked about forming a committee composed of, I believe, 7 people with made up of 2 members of the Board of Selectmen, the town administrator, the fire chief, the highway superintendent. The posting actually probably needs to be changed, a current or retired chief, because we don't have a current chief, and 1 resident at large. And then one part of the reason I'm bringing this up now is the other thing we would be doing, assuming we went to the outside, is we would end up having to post, and it probably will be, I believe, about 6 weeks or so, Bill, before we would get responses, or we can expect to get
If we
responses.
included the MMA Beacon, which is one of the common publications that municipalities advertise job positions, they have, but you get, I think it's the 3rd week in a given month. Maureen can probably give you better. We'll get you the publication in the next month, so you're talking about a several week period of time, and if you want to give them a few weeks from the time it's read, it takes a while. There is a website in Massachusetts that most of the police departments, municipal police departments, though perhaps some others as well, law enforcement, belong to, and you can advertise positions through that website. And from my perspective, that's where you're going to get the biggest bang for your buck. And that's instantaneous. In other words, the posting gets provided to the police department, it's going out within a few minutes and it's there across the state. So we would be doing that in any event, in my opinion. We should be doing that, going to the other police departments. And maybe also go to the MMA. The MMA will just stretch it some.
Mhm. So I suppose the first thing is, input on what process we might like to follow. Courtney, thoughts?
Seems to me casting a wide net would be good. Just to feel like we are welcoming a lot of different options, or looking for the broadest opportunity to find an excellent person.
So internal and external candidates.
Yep.
Jim?
I agree with that. I'm more in favor of that, I think, going forward for a lot of reasons, but especially in general, I mean, but especially with this position, considering everything that we've gone through. I will say I'm impressed with Acting Chief Solis. His communication skills in particular have been needed in this moment, and he, in many ways, has met this moment. But nonetheless, I don't see anything wrong with making him, if he's interested, and I hope he is, I don't see anything wrong with making him compete for the job, along with other candidates. I don't really have an opinion on a 5-member versus a 7-member committee. 7 seems better for some reason. So I'm in favor of the search.
Megan?
Hi. So I too am in favor of casting a wide net. I think it's important, like both Jim and Courtney said, for a multitude of reasons. And so having internal and external candidates. I'm definitely more in favor of this 7-person because it allows for a resident's input. And I would also like to suggest, and I to hear what people say, about trying to get a resident who's not currently serving on any boards or committees. So we really sort of tap into that part of our community that's not already volunteering for something. I think we'll get an interesting perspective in hiring as well.
Okay. Ellen?
Yeah, I agree again with the wide net. I guess, yeah, I mean, I think in terms of the resident, I think it's an interesting idea to try to encourage people who have been involved. I don't know if it needs to be said, it shouldn't be a staff person. And then I just had a question around, I understand most of the people who are on it in terms of the sort of public safety. I was wondering why on the, and this is, since we weren't here for the May discussion, I have to look at it again so I don't forget, the police representative, I mean, sort of former chief, is there a reason why it wouldn't be somebody else, just want somebody currently on the police, in the police department that wouldn't be interested? Is that too conflicted, or has it got to do with the union? I'm just wondering. We don't have that many former police chiefs available, so I don't know if that is a critical piece, or is there some other person who could take up that?
It's one of the things, I've been through this a couple of times right now, and one of the things, when we ended up doing a search for the fire chief, what we did is we had the retiring fire chief do it. And part of it is that if we had somebody internal, the I'll say senior people on the police department would probably be vying for the job. And what we're looking for is we're looking for somebody who actually knows police department policies, procedures, and can guide us for that type of thing, and somebody who isn't actually going to have a conflict of interest in potentially either, that they're going to be potentially hiring their boss. And Bill?
For me, the primary purpose of having a chief, and I prefer retired or not, an outside, is that you're getting someone who, with that experience, who sat in a chair, understands and has working knowledge, strong working knowledge of all the matters that relate to the decision-making that you're trying to hire somebody with. And for me, that's indispensable. You get an experienced chief, retired or still in a chair, and there's groups of chiefs in the state that basically do volunteer their time for these specific things. So the added benefit is they've gone through these hiring processes for people at their level, but they have insight that you can't get if you haven't sat in that chair.
Yeah.
And I found in the times when I've served on committees with them, not here but in my other life, that they become invaluable, because of that experience and because of that working knowledge. And they have a more comprehensive understanding of these matters in that specific discipline than any of the rest of us are going to have.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying that I guess I had, maybe Ellen also thought that we were talking only about people that had served in our town, but that we could easily have or we could possibly have a chief from some other town on this committee.
I'm giving you my viewpoint is for that position as chief, that'd be an outside one, retired or not, but experienced, successful experience.
Yeah.
Has the reputation, and they're out there. And many of them do this gratis in retirement just to help, the profession.
Cool.
And there's some very good ones.
It's an interesting idea that we would have, even a current police chief from a different town, maybe a surrounding town, sit on the committee, but then we just have to change the qualifications because it does say they have to be a registered voter still. But I think that's an interesting idea to have that expertise on the search committee rather than having to sort of go to them for advice or whatever. And we only have one or two of our own retired chiefs. If they don't want to do it, then we lose that opportunity.
Jim?
It's funny, I'm listening to this discussion and I'm actually getting persuaded of the advantages of having a rank and file member on the committee, unless there's I don't see the obvious conflict of interest. We had town employees on the town administrator screening committee. I get the advantage of having someone who's done the chief's job, but then I also see the advantage of having someone who knows the Stow Police Department. My only hesitation is because the two most senior people in the department and the only two people with any meaningful seniority are probably going to be candidates, we would be reaching a little far down into the ranks. I don't know that I'm against it. They would bring more of a union mentality to it. I don't know if that's necessarily bad in one voice out of 7 to have them involved. And I'm a little caught between would I rather have that voice. I'm thinking of some of the officers who we interviewed, who I think have very good sense. Would I rather have them, or would I rather have some chief from a different town who knows nothing about Stow? And I'm not sure about that.
Well, and again, it's your choice to make. My own experience has persuaded me pretty confidently that the value coming out of someone who served in the chair successfully for a number of years is going to bring more to that than a person who's never served there. And in our own department, we've got some good folks, and I know most of them professionally, and a couple of them not as friends, but know them, and they're good with their judgment. They're smart, but I don't know that you can understand and appreciate.
So I'm going to...
Because the chiefs that have been promoted in our department learn a lot on the job and say, I had no idea this is what the job was when I was lieutenant or sergeant. And maybe you get both. But if I had one to choose, I would go with the person who's been in the seat and done all of this as opposed to not.
I'm going to throw out a really wild idea. Don't laugh me out of the room. I get what you're saying, and I see the value of having that in the room. What about the highway superintendent? Why is the highway superintendent there? Especially since he's very new to town. Maybe it would be more valuable to have this retired chief as well as an officer from Stow.
The reason the highway, basically it's public safety and the interconnectedness between the three, because that functional work relationship is critical, especially in a small town. And it's more important that, for me, it's not the experience of police work, because they don't have it. It's more of knowing that the heads of your public safety departments, right, feel good about the ones that they're working with, because if it's not functional and it's dysfunctional, or other matters of difference of approach and management, there can be a disadvantage there. Having said that, it's not my committee, so you could replace the highway superintendent.
I withdraw the suggestion, I'm persuaded. But I'm glad we talked it out.
So my comment on that is perhaps to consider Mr. Salvy's position on the representative from the police department. Would it make any sense to expand the definition of that person's background to include someone on the force who has not been a chief, but not exclude inviting a chief from another town? Or I really like the idea, by the way, of having somebody that's got that experience, that really knows what it takes to be a chief.
Yeah,
that just totally makes sense to me.
I'm going to withdraw the suggestion. It's more of a management job than it really is being a cop.
Yeah.
I'm glad we talked this out, and that you reminded me of that. And in a small town, it is important that the management team be cohesive.
Yeah.
And we don't really need, this person's going to have the experience of being a cop, so we don't need a cop there to make sure they have that experience. I am glad we talked it out, but I am persuaded.
Megan?
Hi, thanks for calling on me. So I did want to say I do agree with Bill. I think that we're hiring for the job and not for the job in the town. So I think it's super important that there is someone on that committee that has been in a chief's role, because in theory, that job should be interchangeable. It should be an interchangeable job. And I had something else, but I forgot, and that's it.
Could I make one last point to it, Jim? You just brought it up, and it's important to this question. There are communities, and it's a growing tendency across the country. They're hiring people to run their police and their fire departments who have not been in either profession, because this is now more considered a management job. Personnel, unions, budgets, all discipline, HR, and the actual police work is done by the ones with working stripes on their shoulders that they're trained for all the time. And so, to me, that just adds to the advantage of getting someone who's been in the chair, because the management experience is what the lower levels, every chief that I've known that's worked their way up, and they all have at some point, they don't start at chiefs, they will tell you the surprises of what they learned about management and how much of that job is management as opposed to police work. Because they're not on the streets, and they're not asked to know the difference between reasonable suspicion and probable cause when an officer comes in. They're trained for that.
Well, that's it. I chaired the committee when we ended up choosing Chief Landry for the fire department. And we had the benefit of a retiring chief from our department on the committee. And he was the one who, was able to, I'll say, sort out some of the people that didn't necessarily have the experience, because he knew what he was talking about. So it's very important that way, I think. Were you waving at me, Ellen? No? Okay. So in that case, we can probably move this along then. If everybody, I think everybody agrees, I agree with the process of of looking at internal and external candidates. Given that this is gonna be, we're posting for a member at large, and what we can do is it's going to be a few weeks before we get all the applications in. And so essentially what we'll be doing is teeing it up for the new town administrator, and we'll start getting in resumes and applications for the job. And we can get that posted so that it's in process at the time, and then the new town administrator will pick it up. So, is everybody good with that concept?
Are we changing the language slightly to address some of the things we just discussed in terms of the actual posting? I don't know, I mean, we might want to say specifically for the police chief, doesn't have to be a resident.
Well, actually, our highway superintendent and our fire chief may not be
Right.
voters either, so.
The notice of vacancy is for one resident member at large.
So that posting's just, okay, sorry.
Right.
But I do think we wanted to take out the current or, because there is no current police chief.
Right.
Right.
Well, I would beg to differ, because if we are,
Could they be a current police chief? If we were going to reach out outside of the, outside of our community, they could be a current police chief.
Yeah,
it doesn't say
right.
the, it says a.
So,
A current.
yeah,
or
so it should be
retired.
a current.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And before I would make a motion to form the subcommittee, we need to talk about a term for the committee.
Why, June 26th, 2020 isn't gonna work for you?
The motion I'm looking at doesn't have a term, so I would just like to talk about the term.
I would say until they provide us the list of 3 to 5 candidates.
Okay, so just to be devil's advocate on that, on some of our other committees where we're getting support like this, their term is a little bit longer than when we think we're going to appoint, in case something tanks and we need to just kind of regroup.
Good point.
I want to suggest annual town meeting 2021.
Work for you guys? Megan?
Or, yeah, I mean, hopefully we'll have found someone by that time.
Yeah.
One would
Oh, yeah.
so hope. Or, how about, until
It doesn't necessarily need to be date specific, but purpose delivered.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Okay.
what we do it based on.
Until we've hired.
At the earliest opportunity, bring forward to the selectmen, the appointing authority, a candidate or candidates.
Well, or maybe it should be until, as Courtney just said, until we hire one, just in case the person.
Yeah,
we
I mean,
offer-
what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
based on a deliverable
Right.
rather than a date.
I'm fine with that.
So,
And can we add to the posting for the individual that it's not a staff person or someone serving on a current committee?
Yeah, I would be in favor of that as well.
work for you guys?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
All right,
Sure.
good with?
Yep.
Let's see, so that is,
Registered voter Stow, not a town employee,
had it,
Town.
go.
employee or current board member, was that the way we,
Yeah, that should cover everybody who's on a board, right, and, I don't know.
So let's see. right, I'll make a stab at this. On the recommendation of the town administrator, I move to establish a police chief hiring subcommittee composed of 7 members, including 2 selectmen, the town administrator, the fire chief, the highway superintendent, a current or retired police chief, and a resident, period. To serve until we have hired a police chief. The committee will be responsible for soliciting and evaluating qualified candidates and recommending a short list of 3 to 5 ranked finalists for the selectmen's further consideration. Further, I move to designate the police chief hiring subcommittee as special municipal employees pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 268A. At-large members must be registered voters of Stow and not a staff member, and agree to comply with state ethics and open meeting law requirements.
Would you accept a friendly amendment,
Absolutely.
not a staff member or current board member?
Yep. I accept.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor? Megan?
Aye.
Ellen?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
I vote aye, so it's unanimous. I think the next part would be to decide if we want to tonight appoint the 2 selectmen members for this. One of the things is, I think when we had talked about this before, because I'm already the liaison and part of a group that is part, with the fire chief, highway superintendent, that we generally screen other employees, that I would generally be on that, but it's not written in stone. So,
I'd be in favor of having you where you're already in your comfort zone and know what you're talking about.
Yeah, me too.
How about Megan, Ellen?
Megan, Ellen?
Yeah, I'm fine with it. I would like to throw my own name in the hat as the other representative, but
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I have a motion. Or 2. I move to appoint Megan Birch McMichael as Selectmen's representative to the Police Chief Search Committee to serve an indefinite to serve
For the term of that committee.
for the term of that committee. Thank you.
Second.
All right. All in favor? Megan?
can I vote on myself? Aye.
Of course.
Ellen?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
I vote aye. Now, do you want to make a motion for myself also?
Let's just
Or is
do
there
it
anybody
ladies
else
first.
that has a burning desire to be involved in something else?
Mr. Chairman, I move to appoint yourself, Thomas Ryan, as Selectmen's representative to the Police Chief Search Committee to serve an indefinite, the term of the committee.
Second.
Megan?
Aye.
Ellen?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Jim?
Aye.
I'll vote aye, so unanimous. And then I think from there, Bill knows what he's got to do as far as get the stuff posted and so on.
Yeah, Maureen just work up the final copy and I'll get it down to the police department. And then she can schedule whenever the next submission date is for the publication of the MMA.
Okay,
And that should do it.
all right. Any more discussion or comments on this? If not, we will move on. Quick discussion of onboarding the new TA. Jim had asked me to add this. I think part of it is, I'm gonna turn it over to either Bill or Jim at this point. I know I've had a quick conversation with Bill, and he already has some plans in place, and he was planning on moving forward. Until I actually put this on the agenda, I didn't know of his plans, so. And I think you've had a conversation with him also, and you had a conversation with Denise previously, hadn't you, Jim?
Yeah, well, I had conversations with other town administrators and selectmen in other towns, but I just want to make sure everybody is aware, as we come to our last meeting, or last two meetings before she gets here. I just want to make sure everybody's on the same page about what we're doing to onboard her, and I want to make sure I'm on the right page. I'm assuming, Bill's covered that he's reaching out to her informally between now and when his tenure is over. I'm assuming that after we give her some decent interval to get herself oriented, that the main onboarding tool is her initial work plan. But that's just what I'm assuming. And I want to make sure we're all on the same page.
So in my activities report, I've just given you a quick summary of what I'm expecting the nature of our conversations will consist of, knowing that I'm still going to be here for some short period of time, part-time, so it's going to be a work in progress. But what I want to do, she'll be coming out here twice before she begins on the 1st, and we were just going back and forth today on what the nature of the discussion from her perspective should be before. So first of all, meeting folks, right, being brought around. She'd like to do that some part of both visits, and what she can't catch up on because we've got some, beyond this building, we've got other buildings to go to, and with COVID, but wants to be brought around, and as she would be introduced. And the other thing is, there's a couple of ongoing projects that I'll discuss with her. One will be, we've got underway for a possible special town meeting, and it's really going to be the process and deliverables that the group who organized the first one, and with improvements, will expand and organize the second one, the manner and means by which, and location. And they'll come to the board and give you options and recommendations that you decide on. The other is the PFAS. I've got a group that has been working for over a year with me with respect to PFAS. And so I told her I'd brief her on that. I'm going to get it started in as much as, and today I got Jim Greffy, who's our health agent, who's been working with us, committed to help with the evaluative process in hiring an LSP. He brings a unique perspective as a health agent for a region of communities and his background in it, which is critical. And Jim Salvi, myself, Craig Martin, and Kathy Sfera. So that's the core. Now, that can be added to as well. So if other individuals that could bring some experience or special knowledge or something, some assistance they want to provide, she, as the chair going forward with that group, can go in any direction they wish to. Primarily, once the hire for the LSP is made, so the first big deliverable for this group is to recommend to the Board of Selectmen the hire of an LSP. The proposals we requested them in advance of town meeting, so we'd be positioned. There's 11 firms that have sent back proposals, so this group will evaluate those, interview, and then come forward to the board. After that, the fact of the matter is the 21E process is pretty well defined and it's pretty well established, and the state will inform you of phased deliverables. So as soon as we get that notice of responsibility, which is pending, I'm not calling to ask them to deliver it, but it will be coming. And with that, accompanying that, behind it, the first deliverable is the IRA. We specifically set up the request for proposals and qualifications on the scope of services expected by DEP under what's called Phase 1, which is the IRA. So that's what and this is what the price is pegged to. So we're not asking for some large sum of money for yet defined purposes going forward. We're going to do as the program is phased. So the 250,000, and we matched that to what the average that we got from the 11 firms, because we asked for separately estimated fees on that specific scope of services that was provided. Once they're hired, they're going to be complying with DEP regulations. They're going to be spending more time talking with DEP than talking with us. But that group will oversee the work of the LSP. The LSP will come to that group regularly to report progress, report any communications with DEP, DEP's positioning and concerns, if any, and how things are changing in the field, because this is an emerging field of concern and science, and the regs are changing, as they've changed twice now in the last year with DEP, and they'll continue to. The other thing is there'll be money sourced, public money, that towns can apply for and access to offset the cost related to this. So she's aware of that. I asked her if she minded if I got it started. She said no, not at all. But given it's only 2 weeks away, get it started, she probably could sit in on the first meeting. By the time we get organized, have each individual evaluate the firms and rank them, shortlist those you want to interview. By the time that occurs, Denise will be in the chair. So I'm expecting that she can, and obviously I'll be working with her on this and anything else she wants to in the short time that I'm here.
Yep. But I think the main thing that I wanted to make sure of, and I knew Bill was going to be around, but he's having conversations with Denise ahead of time, bringing her up to speed on a number of things, and she's just not going to be thrown in.
Yeah, and look, that's just what I'm doing because of it's my position.
Mm-hmm.
The board can have other things. I mean, onboarding is a broad term.
Mm-hmm.
So meet and greet and me technically going through all those things that, the routine of signing the warrant process and other things, and then she's on her own and I'll be upstairs in the closet for a bit, and after that,
Yep.
But the board can, if you've got other things that you want to do for onboarding, that's fine too.
So basically, it was just kind of that update. Any questions, Ellen?
I guess in terms of sort of our role in onboarding, it's really, I guess, more about, is there something we want to plan? I mean, actually with COVID, maybe it makes it a meaningless exercise to have a welcome greeting event. That's not
Where everybody can stand 6 feet apart.
Yeah, it's certainly, so,
Well,
that's what I would be advocating for, but obviously that's not gonna be a good idea, so.
Yep. I think just that Bill is going to be taking care of her, bringing her up to speed. Then he's going to be here one day a week or as much, for a while to fill her in on anything. I think, as Jim said, then, a month or so down the line, we can start talking about, once she figures out what's going on here and has met people, then we can start talking to her about a work plan for the next year or something like that. So I just didn't want to. I just, it was good for me to talk to Bill and understand it, so I figured I'd bring you guys up to date on that too. So if there's nothing else on that, then we'll move on.
Can I ask the board one question? The Boxborough Town Administrator sent me a copy of his initial work plan. I think it was his initial one. Would the board members find it helpful to see that? I could have it put in correspondence.
I would like to see that, yes.
Yeah, sure.
That'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
I think that's the only one I got. I'll dig it out.
Right. And I think town administrators report. I think
So, the portion related to Denise I've just gone through. The other is just an update on the group that I've got working on the Chapter 61 project. Going along smoothly. last week's meeting resulted in establishing a date that the CPC will discuss, which is the 17th of August, this project, its application. My understanding is probably wouldn't expect a decision that night, but you'd get started, follow up with a decision. I think the expectation is that the CPC, from early indications, will be supportive of providing funds, and I think the plug number that's being used is $350,000. I think that's what the application will reflect. So you'll have that decision soon. The other two possible funding sources are the possible sale of one or two of the 7 building lots. There's been a preliminary value attached to that by asking local realtors, and as the developer is going to take a look as well, between $200,000 and $300,000 for each lot. Again, a plug number of a possible $500,000 for the 2 if there were going to be 2. Part of that is going to be driven by how much private fundraising, what the amount of the private fundraising number will be. The preferred approach from those who are interested in this property is that the balance, the $650,000 to reach $1 million, could be privately raised. That amount less than the $650,000 then would bring into play the possible sale. And the sale would occur probably at the closing of the purchase. So, and that private fundraising, and I think I've mentioned the Lake Boone Commission, members thereof interested in helping, and the Stow Conservation Trust through Bob Wilbur and the others. So we've got a member of the Lake Boone Association and the chair, well, I know Bob isn't what his position is, the Stow Conservation Trust. So those two are meeting,
Might be the chair.
and they're beginning the discussion and reaching out and starting the fundraising process. They're going to be aggressive about it. The goal is to try to raise all the money that's necessary, minus the $350,000. If that doesn't work, then sale of property. So then there is no town taxpayer money that would be needed. So I think that would change significantly the prospects of success going to town meeting and getting approval for that. Now, alternatively, you have the right to assign to a qualified nonprofit, to use the term in the statute, to carry on. We've done that once in my 28 years. Wasn't a successful effort, but we should use that as a measure for this. But that is you already know that, but you can consider that. September 8th, the group would like to come to you, give you to that moment an update as to what's going on. There will be a walkover on the site this Friday of the group, and then you're invited to one that's scheduled for September for the selectmen to go out and take a look as well, and probably other interested folks with that. And so the due diligence process is ongoing, and it's made a lot of progress, and it will continue.
It's great.
Any questions? Nope. Okay. Liaison reports then. And we'll start with you, Jim.
Is Mr. Wrigley gonna
Oh, and
go off for the?
Well, if he's leaving, point of personal privilege, Mr. Chair.
yes.
This is my last meeting with Bill Wrigley as town administrator. I will zoom into the next one, depending on what the internet connection is like where I'm going, but I will have plenty of chance to say goodbye and to tell you what a great job you've done and how much fun it's been. But there's one thing I need to say in public and in person, which is you have so much to be proud of. As you leave this place, you really took this, you really changed this town, and you did a great job. And I just want to say that, and I want to say thank you.
Well, I appreciate the kind words, and it's, I feel the same way about the community, so before I feel that.
One of the things, Megan and Ellen, just so you know, when we get to liaison reports, a lot of times we'll just let Bill go because he's got a long drive.
Gotcha.
And-
Can I pop in real quick though? Because my only liaison report is something that you it out with Jesse today for planning board, Bill, and I didn't know if you wanted to shed a little light on what might be coming to the Board of Selectmen.
Well, I'm not certain yet, but in talking with Jesse, I think we had a tentative agreement with regard to going forward with a work
Talked
plan.
about it tonight, I just got clarification from them on it, so.
Oh, so you have something I don't. I didn't know what was
They are
going.
gonna put something together, yeah, to send it to us.
Yeah, so this is with respect to outdoor dining.
Yep.
And as it relates to attempting to formulate an effective working application that's abbreviated, I'm using what I told him I thought would be important.
Yep.
Something abbreviated, something simple, that is easily approved, processed and approved. Now, even with the Board of Selectmen's involvement, because you're the licensors of common vitular, liquor, and those things, typically there's a hearing involved for you, as there is for a special permit, which is what was just voted at the annual town meeting for outdoor dining. And so Jesse and I were chatting about working from that base, which is trying to comply with the new bylaw. And at the same time, because the Board of Selectmen is going to have to sign off on what will either be an amended license. The licenses you sign now for common victulars and for alcohol has a provision on it which talks about describe the premises. I was just simply telling him maybe the easiest thing to do. I've seen some more complicated approaches. I think it was a 13 or 14 page application process from a neighboring community, which I just think we don't have the same level of business, but I don't know how that was going to save anybody time and such. But in any event, describing the premises, typically it will say on the license, within the building, blah, blah, blah. But you can describe, and I, as a selectman or in a town council in other communities where I've lived, you can include the entire property that they own. So you can allow them, for example, if you describe the premises under that permit for inside as well as outside, and you have a sketch that gives you some dimensions and an idea of what the nature of that outside seating might be, or whatever you're providing for an accommodation, pavilion, chairs, tables, you can just, if you pen that in or type it in and sign it, then you've taken care of what I think would be your requirements to give new license or an amended license where you have that control on it. Now, we can confirm that, but I think that's the simplest way for you to do it. But I think it probably still requires a hearing. I don't know, but I'll check on that, because the butters would have to write, they have the same rights they would under the original. That doesn't change, and I know a special permit has it, but you could have a combined hearing, something to abbreviate the process. There's only a few months left in the outdoor eating season as it is. I think we've got maybe 4 or 5 establishments that might be interested in doing it. Some, I think, perhaps, and that's what the planning board's concern was, is exercising perhaps an illicit right that they had to try to accommodate, But that's where I am, and that's Jesse was going to work on it, and so.
All right,
Megan, is that right? So the whole idea here, because I don't even know what this issue is that some establishments just went ahead and did this, but they're not in compliance with the new bylaw, so now we're trying to come up with an expedited application process?
that is 100% what is going on, and
Okay.
I believe that Lori had spoken with the Board of Health, because sometimes the Board of Health handles it in some communities. I had spoken to Tom offline about this, trying to get some information gathered before bringing it to you all. So I do think they're just going to bring that to us. I can send you, like Provincetown has an application that is sort of covers it really quickly. It seems like a pretty quick, application one. But I think the planning board is handling all of what they're going to bring to us. I don't think they're expecting us to put together what a temporary permit would look like, or whatever that change would look like.
Yeah, and that's it. They know what they're looking for to get into compliance.
I think they're
so.
just going to need they need us to understand that as the licensing body, we would need to sign off on that, basically. And so I just wanted to bring that to everybody's attention, that it's going to be coming in correspondence.
And I think that sign off is specific to your permitting authority for common victular and or liquor.
Yep.
Right.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Bill, I appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank Bill.
Right.
So you were going to start with me. I met with the chairs of the FinCom and the library trustees, just introduce myself and see what's going on. I enjoyed both very, very much, and I'm looking forward to that. I also went to my first LACAC meeting, and I probably understood maybe 40% of what they were talking about, so that's not bad for the first meeting. Hopefully the percentage will go up from there. That's about it.
Courtney?
I do not have enough to report tonight. I have not a lot to say.
Excellent. Ellen?
Well, the exciting news, I got an email from Allison Toole today that the new 8-passenger van that is replacing the one that was totaled in an accident not of their responsibility last year is coming at the end of this week or early next week. So they're very excited to have the van back. And Minuteman Voc Tech is actually talking tonight in the school committee meeting about what their plans are for the fall. So they're not. I don't know if it's as challenging as Neshoba, but it certainly is a hot topic. And the cemetery committee is meeting tomorrow afternoon at 4 o'clock at the old fire station, but it is not available by Zoom, so I will not be there. And that's really all I got.
All right. Megan?
So you got my planning board report.
Yep.
The school committee met last night, and they voted to decide they're going full remote for the high school. They're doing a hybrid model for the middle and elementary schools as of right now. Obviously, that's all subject to change once the unions and if the state gets involved, or there's like 1,000 other factors before school starts on the 16th. I have been listening to the interviews for the Town Hall Restoration Committee, and I have been talking to a couple of the members. I'm going to sit in on Thursday. We have our last 2 interviews for that. Hold on a minute. What other committees am I on? Lakeford Commission. I just got an email from them. I think I have a meeting with them next week. I've not heard anything about Tri-Town, and am I missing one?
Well, you don't have to have something from every one of them every time.
No, I know. I was doing the laundry list of, I feel like I've touched base with all of them, so that's all I got.
All right. The only thing I've got is Highway Department. They've obviously been busy. They've been lining a lot of roads. And they've been chopping up trees, and they're planning on cleaning up from last week's storm as they, in between seal coating roads and striping them and other things like that. So they're carrying on, and looks like they've done some nice work on some of the roads I've seen.
May I add something to that?
Yes, sir.
So on Friday, Brian Hatch, Deputy Superintendent of Highway, called me. He was driving the route for the Bike for the Woods bike ride, identifying potholes and either patching them or at least circling them in orange. I don't remember any year when that happened before, and it's greatly appreciated.
That's sweet.
Yeah,
You must have friends that you must have friends in high places.
I think it's Steve Nadeau. I think maybe he, or just Brian.
That's great.
So.
Yep. If there's nothing, does anybody have anything else? Oh, Megan?
Was there a Board of Health meeting this past week? Sorry that I'm very interested in this.
Not to my knowledge, but I've just gotten on their list, and I think they do have one coming up this week, I believe, but it's on Thursday.
I mean, I already have 4 other meetings, but I feel like, given everything that's going on, I just would like some more information from what their meetings look like.
I have a comment regarding Board of Health and COVID. I happened to go on the town website today, and I saw what I believe is a new link that is more visible on the landing section of the website, the main page, with a link for weekly COVID report. And I think it took me to the Board of Health page, and I felt as though the information had been moved around so that clear information about wearing masks and staying 6 feet apart. I just felt like attention had been paid since our last conversation about giving a cohesive message. And I feel like our town website now has a clearer message that's hard to miss.
Yeah, I mean, I'm looking at it, Courtney. It does have a lot of links to other pages, and I appreciate it for sure that that's there. I just feel like, I don't know. I'm going to go off on a separate thing, and this is the end of the meeting. But I just, I was in town building today and was a little disappointed because someone walked into the building with no mask on and walked right by me with no mask on, and I was like, we can't let people into our store without masks on, so like, how can they even start talking about opening town building to the public if the people who are able to get in there are not wearing them? But that's my tangent, so I'm sorry. I just wanted to ask about the Board of Health again.
Actually not a tangent, but I did actually get the word that the testing's being done at Lake Moon weekly. I don't know, I actually haven't looked to see if it's posted on that website or not, but they are testing. I didn't go through my rec stuff, but we did get confirmation. In fact, there was a senior swim group that has been given permission to have a class, contrary to what we've heard in July. So, but at least the water now is tested and safe. And the gate's staying open till 8 o'clock and staffed until 8 o'clock now. So I forgot about that. That's all I know about that. But I would agree. I mean, I'm on the Vineyard now. Every town has personalized signs everywhere saying, this is a mask zone. You wear a mask here. And I'm concerned that the Board of Health, maybe it has too much on their plate, but it's really important that we visibly talk about this and that we're making sure people are following the rules. And I was really concerned to hear that there were staff in town building not wearing masks. I understand in their offices, not a problem. But if they're walking the halls, I mean, almost every business right now in Massachusetts is required, if you're in the hallways and public spaces, you have a mask on. So I was very disappointed to hear that that's the attitude of some, at least a couple employees, and that's really a big concern to me as well. So I don't want this to only be Megan's concern, it's my concern as well.
Well, one last comment. It looks like you have your hand up there. Linda?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out, I looked at the website. So in the news and announcements, that's going to stay on at the near the top of that web page until we start adding more newer updates. So it will drop down after a little while, but right now it's going to be really visible. So, and that also has an opportunity to be sent out to subscribers who subscribe to the news and announcements. So a lot of people should get that. And it'll probably, I'll double check to see if it's on the Board of Health page specifically. It could be in multiple places. But after a little while, Courtney, it's going to disappear.
Okay.
Maybe we should have this
Right now it's
conversation.
visible.
Mr. Chairman, maybe we should have this conversation with the Board of Health present sometime.
Yeah.
Yes, please.
All right. Anything else? If not, I'll take a motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Megan and Ellen are aye.
Aye.
Aye here. Thank you, and have a nice evening. And Ellen, it looks really